Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. Today, March 7th, um, we're here to talk about 5G towers and how to address the rapid encroaching of them on, well, all of New York City, but since we're in the Bronx, particularly the Bronx, our main speaker tonight is Odette Wilkins, who is president and general counsel of Wired Broadband Inc., which is a nonprofit in New York City advocating against 5G towers being plopped in the middle of our neighborhoods. So please, Odette, feel free to expand on that. That was just me winging it.
Well, that's fine. Thank you so much for having me. I'm also a technology attorney, and I've been a technology attorney for over 20 years. So I have negotiated with many, on behalf of a number of multinational corporations. So I know how technology companies work, and so I have a bit of a perspective on this issue. I am also leading the New York City Alliance for Safe Technology because there are many people in New York City who are opposing the 5G towers. And I'm also chair of the National Call for Safe Technology because there are many people across the country who are affected by the same issues that we're dealing with here in New York City. And they are also opposed to the 5G towers. And I'd like to go over with you why that this issue is so important. New York City is slated to get 2,000 5G towers on our city streets. And the city has been going from community board to community board to talk about the 5G towers and how great it is and how it's going to bridge the digital divide. It's not great and it's not going to bridge the digital divide. So I would like to go over those things. And I have a slide presentation. If I can share my screen.
Yes, you should be able to.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, choose.
Share button on the bottom.
Yeah, it says choose what to share. And I have a PowerPoint presentation, but it's not, oh, Chrome window. Oh, here we go. Window, entire screen. I'm going to go for entire screen, and you'll let me know. Can you see the entire screen? Okay, can you see my?
No.
Can you see my? No, you can't see my screen. So it's much easier on Zoom than it is on Webex. How do I do this?
Yeah, when I have to use Zoom, I have no idea where the buttons are. So it's like it's like whether you're
yes.
Do you
Okay.
see a share? Do you see a share button all the way at the bottom?
Yeah. So I'm sharing my PowerPoint. I already identified the PowerPoint that I wanted to share.
And you already hit the share button at the bottom?
Yes, I did. I hit the share button at the bottom. You know what?
Oh, something's happening.
It should show you the screens.
Yes, and so you know what I'm going to do because it says share. I can either share content, share application. So I have my PowerPoint application open, but that's not working either. So I'm going to try screen again. And let me see. Otherwise, what I can do is, can I send this PowerPoint presentation to you right now, and then you can share it from your screen?
Okay, I will attempt to do that. If you send it to my email address.
Yes, I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
I'll put my number in the chat, my email as well in the chat, send it to both of us so I can help Carla too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I'm sending it to your Gmail.
Yep.
Okay, okay, I have yours, and now I'm going to include, let me see, in the chat you indicated your email. Okay, great. I'm going to include you as well on this email. And let me just attach the file. All right. Well, you know what? It's too big of a file. I can't send it. So I'll just, I'm sorry. I had some really great graphics for you. I'm just going to have to wing it then.
Try again though.
Fine.
Hit this share. You have your presentation on a certain tab, right?
I have it. No, it's not in a tab. It is a PowerPoint presentation. It is on my
But you have it
PowerPoint.
open?
It's
You
open.
have it open on your desktop?
Yeah, it's open. It's open on my desktop. It's ready to
Okay.
go. We're ready to go. And so
Try the share again.
okay, so I'm sharing my screen, right?
Well, it gives you a few options, but you'd have to pick the one that shows your thing. You see how it says file as well? Maybe you can share a file and we
No,
can do it that way.
it just says screen or application. What?
It doesn't give you your presentation?
No, it says, what do you want to share, screen or application? So I'm saying I want to share my screen, and then it gives me three things: Chrome tab, window, and entire screen.
Yeah, you would have to see that, the presentation. It would have been good to see it, but I guess if you can't send it, there's a way to also share it on the share button. There's a way to share a file. I wanted to see if that would work for you.
Okay, so how do I share? How do I
So
do
open
that?
share again, all the way at the top. You're gonna see screener application, file, whiteboard, camera, hit the file. You see that?
Okay, the only thing that it's saying is to share content and either screen or application. It's not giving me any other.
Got it. Okay.
It's not giving me anything else. So I apologize, but I don't want to belabor this. So I'm going to just start into my presentation. These are 32-foot towers, and they have 5 bays of antennas. The one bay of antenna is free Wi-Fi, and then the other 4 are subscription services for 4G and 5G. Now, and there is no setback requirement. They are huge. They're 3 stories high, and so they're level with a third floor story. Now we also have 4G and 5G small cells, which are those little backpacks that you'll see on the light poles that we have, and there are about let me see. Oh, you know what? I'm going to see. Can you see that at all? No, you still can't see that. Okay. Okay, you can't see that. Oh, that's fine. So and there are 4G, 5G small cells. There are those little backpacks on the light poles.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and those are there have been over 7,000 installed. About 3,000
Person
are
needs to show you how to do it.
I'm sorry.
Because there's a couple of areas that she didn't try. The one is share content or share.
Ms. Benitez, we can hear you. Can you mute yourself?
Okay.
Okay, so over 7,000 have been installed. About 3,000 have been approved, and about 3,000 have been proposed. So why do we need additional 5G cell towers? Is not clear. And not only that, but we're also getting pole top antennas. You may have seen those canisters on top of light poles, and those also have 4G, 5G antennas. You may have also seen the rooftop antennas where there's a slew of antennas on top of people's roofs. And so we are saturated with these cell towers, and we really don't need any more of these 5G towers. Now, um, the argument that is being brought forth is that this is going to bridge the digital divide. Well, it's not going to bridge the digital divide, because if we're looking at the digital divide as providing people with service in their homes, the free Wi-Fi is designed for only in-street use. It's not designed for in the home use. If there's any kind of coverage that the home might receive, it's totally incidental. And then who's going to service that? No one. And how much is it going to cost for the subscription services? Nobody knows, because the contracts don't seem to be in place with any of the telecom carriers, or at least we don't know of any. And so wireless has an innate obsolescence, and that is by design, because you know your iPhone 10, 11, 12, 15, 20, whatever it is, that's simply a marketing term. So 5G is simply a marketing term that is not a technical term. And 5G could mean a lot of different things to all the different carriers. It's not uniform. It is meant as a marketing plan, so that they can then say that they're adding additional services and they're making things even better, just like the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 15, so that you will be compelled to buy those devices and buy the ever increasingly expensive services. So that becomes a problem, because what's going to happen when we're now going from 4G to 5G? Now, who's going to be able to afford a 5G phone and the additional services that 5G is going to come with? And then now they're already talking about 6G and even 10G. Who's going to be able to afford those phones and services? So if we're trying to bridge the digital divide to unserved and underserved populations, how can we do that if they're constantly going to be behind the eight ball, having to buy all new devices and all new services, because the industry is retiring the prior generations? 3G is already retired. There's a friend of mine who had a 3G phone, perfectly functional. She got a 4G phone. It doesn't work so well, but she can't use her 3G phone, and she had to buy a new 4G phone and new 4G services and that kind of thing. So this is just going to perpetuate the whole issue. Now, what the national priority has been is to go with fiber to the premises. And the National Telecommunications and Information Administration has affirmed fiber to the premises. So with this new infrastructure, the infrastructure money that the federal government is giving out, they are prioritizing fiber to the premises. Now, Tom Wheeler, who was a former FCC chair, called fiber future-proof, with wireless only as a last resort. Fiber and wireless are not equivalent technologies. Fiber is used for broadband or wired connections. And by fiber, I am also including coaxial cable and also copper wires. We need our copper wires, because if the electricity goes down, the wireless services go down. We still need a way to communicate for emergencies, and we need the telephone. AT&T had huge outages in California just a week ago, a couple of weeks ago, and there were many people in a number of cities who did not have service because the cellular service went down. So if you did not have a landline, if you did not have copper lines, you couldn't call 911 on your cell phone, you didn't have any way to call for emergencies. So the cell phone service is not really the panacea that the telecom industry wants everyone to believe. Now, the one of the issues that has come up in the community boards time and time again is 5G safe? And and just to let you know that there has been no pre-market testing for safety regarding 5G. There was a hearing that U.S. Senator Blumenthal held with the telecom industry back in 2019, and he asked them, "Are there any industry studies to determine the safety of 5G?" And they said, "None that we know of." So he said, "We're flying blind here as far as health and safety is concerned, and we're still flying blind." The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer classified wireless radiation as a possible human carcinogen in 2011. Now, there are a number of scientists, including one of the scientists who I believe was also on that working group, who are now calling wireless radiation a known human carcinogen. New Hampshire set up a commission in order to study safety concerns relating to wireless radiation, particularly 5G. And their findings, they found that it was harmful to people and the environment. Now, when we're talking about safety, when we're looking at a child versus an individual using a cell phone, when a 5-year-old child uses a cell phone, the radiation goes mostly throughout their entire brain. It affects their entire brain practically. A 10-year-old child, a little bit less, and an adult, it'll be even less. And it was found that people who live close to cell towers have a number of symptoms: fatigue, sleep disturbance, headaches, feeling of discomfort, difficulty concentrating, depression, memory loss, irritability, instability. There's cardiovascular issues, neurological issues. Now, you might be wondering, is anybody regulating this? Well, the FCC is supposed to be regulating it, and they've set emission limits. Now, those emission limits date back to 1996, and they are based on studies that go back to the 1980s. So the Environmental Health Trust, and you'll hear from Theodora in a few minutes, the Environmental Health Trust sued the FCC and won. In 2021, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. ruled that the FCC failed to review 11,000 pages of peer-reviewed scientific studies showing harm, that their actions were arbitrary and capricious, and that their outdated 1996 limits were remanded back to the FCC for reconsideration. So what does that mean practically for us? It means that the FCC, by the way, has not done anything. It's now been over 2 years, and the FCC has not done anything to update their outdated limits. So what does that mean for us? It means that on the technical level, as long as the telecom industry is within the FCC limits, they're technically compliant. So what does that mean for our safety? We can't bring any claims for personal injury or death in the event of injury or harm from wireless radiation, so long as the telecom industry falls within the FCC's emission limits. What does that mean on a legal basis? That means that you have no claim for personal injury, and that this is a safe harbor for industry. In other words, it immunizes industry from liability for personal harm. Now, every wireless installation, there's been no safety zone for either tower collapse or fire. These 5G towers have no setback requirement. In other words, they can put it as close as 6 feet, as close as 1 foot outside of your window. Well, what happens if there's a collapse? And it doesn't happen often, but if it does happen, it can be a catastrophe, and it can crash into your window, onto people on the street, onto vehicles. It's also a fire hazard because the wireless towers are electrical installations. Do we know whether they comply with New York City electrical and building codes? I don't know. And it takes up to 60 minutes to cut the power, lest the firefighters may get electrocuted. So within those 60 minutes, if it's that close to your window, you have to escape. And it can fly, then the flames can certainly fly into your apartment or into your home. So these should not be anywhere close to homes, schools, or businesses. And really, there should be a setback requirement for at least the the length of the tower. So if it's 32 feet tall, it should at least be 32 feet in circumference around 32 feet, sorry, radius around the structure, so that if it falls, it'll fall in its own imprint, not on people or their homes. But with respect to fires, uh, that's not anywhere of a sufficient distance. Now, there have been major fires in California. There have been 4 major fires that were either caused by or contributed to by a faulty telecom equipment. The worst was in Woolsey. This was the Woolsey fire of 2018. That was the worst fire in California history, and it was because of a faulty lashing wire that had not been attended to for 6 months. They knew about it for 6 months, they didn't attend to it, caught fire, and the rest is history. So it caused $6 billion worth of damages, 100,000 acres destroyed, 295,000 people were evacuated, and there were several deaths. Now, there was another instance in Chula Vista, California in 2021, when the entire cell tower became molten plasma because the temperatures reached so high, and these temperatures can reach up to 35,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 3 times the estimated temperature of the sun. And this took a huge 100-foot tower and converted it into molten plasma. Now, even the telecom industry characterizes wireless radiation as a pollutant in their device protection plans, and they disclaim any injuries. Insurance companies such as Lloyd's of London and Swiss Re will not insure for personal injury because of the high risk of personal injury claims, and that 5G is off the leash. So we asked the city through various Freedom of Information law requests to answer some questions. What are the frequency bands? What's the power potential of these antennas? What are the electrical engineering drawings? What are the visual impact studies? Where are the FCC compliance reports to show that they're actually compliant with the FCC emission limits? Where are the gaps in phone service? Where are the drive-by tests to show that there are gaps? Where are the denial of service reports? Nothing. I have placed these requests in for the and it's been over a year, and I have not gotten any answers. So, and also, if we're looking at energy and climate change, 5G is power hungry and can consume 3 to 4 times the energy required for 4G, and maybe up to 61 times by 2030. And the New York City Environmental Review came up with no significant impact on energy consumption. That is incorrect. So right now, there are 16 community boards that have issued moratoria or disapprovals on these 5G towers. That is about 25% of New York City that's opposed to these towers. And that represents, those 16 community boards represent 2 million New York City residents. And they're citing health, public safety, nuisance, privacy, reduced property values, and the fact that they're ugly and obtrusive. City Bridge received notice from the FCC of noncompliance. All 2,000 towers must undergo environmental and historic preservation review under the National Environmental Policy Act and the National Historic Preservation Act. We are now in the throes of the National Historic Preservation Review for all of the towers, and they do have a listing of those applications that have been proposed. And so it's very important to become a consulting party as quickly as possible. You can do so individually or as part of the board, or if you're part of an organization, so that you know when there's a notice of their application to the State Historic Preservation Office that they want to place a tower in a particular location in your district. If you have consulting party status, you have access to everything. You have access to all the information on the database for every single tower that's proposed in New York City. You can see people's responses, and you can upload your response. And that just about gives you an overview of what we're dealing with here. So oh, Theodora is on. So let me have Theodora say a few words.
Welcome. Welcome, Theodora.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So, thanks, Odette. You covered a lot of ground there. And I'm glad to also answer questions about our lawsuit. I just want to clarify a few things about it. When in 2021, the court mandated that the FCC respond. They said that the FCC had to explain how its limits, those are the regulatory human exposure limits that we have for cell towers and devices and so forth, how they protect children because of their unique vulnerability. Children absorb the radiation deeper, and they also are more sensitive because they have developing brains and so forth, like any other toxic exposure. They needed to address wildlife and environmental issues, and also the way that we test devices, and also issues like impacts to the brain, impacts to reproduction, oxidative stress, endocrine, thyroid, and so forth. The FCC has not responded at all. So if their limits were based on an up-to-date review of the science, or if, you would think that they would say, oh, don't worry, I got this. We know how our limits are protective. Let me show you the reports that we have. There are no such reports. There are no, I certainly believed before I learned about this, which was now over a decade ago, now 12 years ago, when I started working on this issue, I believed that, of course, the federal government had done a full review of everything, and they were always looking at the science, and they were discussing it, and the scientists were like going, well, this study found an effect, but that study didn't, so we think this, right? Just like when you go to a doctor, they look at your whole body, they do all these tests, they rule things out, they talk to other doctors, they bring in whoever is needed to treat you, and they come up with the best plan. None of that is happening. We have a complete dropping of the ball at the federal level, and yet everyone points to the federal government as providing safety, saying, well, the FCC, we meet FCC limits, so we're fine. I want to show you this slide of FCC limits, and WebEx is always fun for me, so let's see if I'm even able to do this. Can you see my screen?
Thank you.
Oh, yes. How did you do that?
Look, I said share and then I clicked on the screen, but it's not quite right. But can you see the image?
Yes.
Like, I want to make sure. Okay. So other countries have much more restrictive limits. The United States, we allow the most, along with a couple other countries, radiation from cell towers and cell networks in the air compared to many other countries. Oops, I just put this together and I gotta get that, sorry, doing too many things. So we have, India dropped its limits by 1/10 of what they were before, after their Ministry of Forests and Environment looked at the issue and found that the majority of studies, to bees, to humans, to animals, to mammals, found effects. So they dropped it by 1/10 of what it was before. China and Russia have long studied this because of, after the Cold War, there was, a race to have weapons that involved radar, and they also wanted to protect the guys who were working with this technology. And they still have a very active bioeffects program compared to the United States, where we were fully defunded in 1996 from researching this issue. The EPA was. In fact, the EPA was setting limits that would have protected for biological effects. Right now, we only protect against heating effects. And of course, Italy has maintained its limits despite every year industry coming in with a highly funded campaign to get them to change their limits, but they are maintaining their limits, as well as Switzerland and actually several Eastern European countries. So many other communities have setbacks, and there's a whole list on our site where they have setbacks for cell towers and small cells from homes, residents, sometimes just for schools. But in DC and in New York City, things can be 10 feet. In fact, I don't believe there is a setback, a permanent setback that is even in place in Washington, DC. They can be even closer, but they are 10 feet or more where I am in DC. So, and I think Odette mentioned the New Hampshire State Commission that recommends 1,640 feet. Based on scientific studies, there have been many reviews that recommend that distance so that the level goes to below background. There is a study that I can put in the chat by Alfonso Bomori that looked at all of the recent reviews on cell towers and cell tower antennas and found cancer as well as a constellation of symptoms like microwave illness, headaches, dizziness, sleep issues, endocrine issues, and also biochemical changes. So there's studies where they test the blood of people before and after installations, or also where they look at people who are far and closer to installations and test their blood for different, it depends on the study actually, but different changes in their blood. So also, this is a statement from T-Mobile, and all companies have warnings to their shareholders. They warn their shareholders that things might change. They don't say safety is assured. They say that, for example, here, this is T-Mobile's statement to shareholders, that the FCC is gathering data, time to time gathering data, and its assessment of the risks associated with wireless devices may evolve based on its findings. And any of these changes could, of course, result in consumers purchasing fewer devices and wireless services, or could result in significant legal and regulatory liability, and could have a material adverse effect on our businesses, reputation, financial condition, cash flows, and operating results, because they have to have told their shareholders, but they don't warn the people who live near these installations. And Verizon, AT&T, all the companies have similar statements, and I can put a link in the chat to a briefing on that. In addition, the International Association of Firefighters has long been opposed to cell towers on their stations, because many years ago there was a study that was done when there was an installation on a facility, and the firefighters got sick and started having these symptoms. And ever since then, they have this official opposition where they say that until a study with the highest scientific merit and integrity on the health effects of exposure to low-intensity radio frequency microwave radiation is conducted, and until it is proven that such sightings are not hazardous to the health of our members, they are opposed to these installations. And there are hundreds of scientists who are stating that there are all these effects documented in literature, and there needs to be action at the UN. And I think Odette went over those, so I'm not going to do that. One thing I want to say is that there's a lot of talk about these bridging the digital divide. And that is just using this issue to sell goods, because actually what we believe is that what's needed is affordable service, affordable computers, and access to training and education, not just putting up these poles kind of randomly, really, not even, they're blanketing, but at the same time, they're not exactly everywhere you would think they would need them, where you have to pull from outside your building to grab the signal from outside. People really need affordable service in their homes, not just, at different levels, because as I understand it, I know someone in New York City told me how much they pay for service, and I was appalled. I mean, this is appalling. So I don't know who can afford that. And the Swiss Re, I know that Odette talked a little bit about that, but I'm not sure if you mentioned the Swiss Re report, which described 5G as off the leash, a high impact emerging risk. And they talked about concerns in this report related to the negative health effects, which may come with a long latency, meaning not right now, but later down the line. In fact, there are many reports on this. It's compared to asbestos, to lead, and that's why insurance companies won't cover it. That's why the companies themselves don't even have coverage by an insurer for if there is health damages. They self-insure for that. And the question is, if insurance companies won't take the risk, why are we? And why are shareholders being warned, but not us, especially in light of the mounting science? And one last thing I'll say, if you want to kind of do a quick 1, 2, 3 on this issue, is to read the Harvard report it's called Captured Agency, by an investigative reporter, Norm Alster. He talks about how wireless companies are using the same playbook as big tobacco, and how the FCC is captured by the very industry that it's supposed to be regulating. A lot of FCC commissioners and who are making these decisions are actually former wireless industry insiders, lawyers, lobbyists, and so forth. And there's this revolving door where they go back and forth. So you might go from Verizon being their lawyer to being FCC commissioner, and then back to working for industry after your time. And this revolving door, where's the room for caring about public health and the environment? Anyway, I'm glad to, now I'm gonna see if I can stop. Okay. I'm glad to answer any questions. This is a big issue, and I could talk all night about it or answer any questions for you on this issue.
So this is Carla. I just have, well, I have many questions, but number one is, can you explain this business model? Like, who benefits from slapping these huge unsightly towers in the middle of our community sidewalks? How does that all work between City Bridge and the city? I mean, I have some idea, but I'm a little fussy on the details.
That's a really good question, as to who benefits. And that is the question, in my opinion.
Yeah, the only people who benefit are the telecom carriers. The residents do not benefit from it at all.
I thought there was some benefit, the city charges.
Oh yeah, the city is supposed to get a particular percentage, but what happened is that initially when they negotiated with City Bridge for Link 5G, we were supposed to get some like 50% revenues from their ad revenues and all of that for using this our city assets. But then it went all the way down to like, I don't know, 7 or 8%. I haven't looked at the contracts recently, but the amendment number 3 really reduced the amount that New York City would be getting. So now we have these 5G towers with 5 levels of 5 bays, 4 of which will be subscription. And it seems to me that these subscription bays are going to really produce a lot of money for the telecom industry. And so the city, I guess, sees this as a revenue stream. And the second thing is that they're saying that City Bridge is putting in free fiber to the premise, to free fiber, is building out the fiber network. Well, there's a couple of things about that. One is that Verizon was supposed to build out the fiber network for all of New York, and that did not happen. And the irregulators, there was a lawsuit involving the regulators in which the question was whether the state can investigate how the telecom industry has spent the monies that they got from people like us who were paying extra subsidies to the telecom industry since the 1990s for the purpose of building out the fiber network. And from what I understand, I'm not an expert on this, but from what I understand, the FCC has certain accounting rules that allowed them to divert the monies that they got from us in order to build out the fiber network, and diverted it to their wireless enterprises. Now, in this irregularities lawsuit, the judge specifically stated that we can look behind those FCC accounting rules and the state AGs can conduct their own investigations. So that has to be done. The other thing is that what is not being said is that in the contract with City Bridge can use third-party providers for their fiber, to provide the fiber. And in the event that they do that and the city allows the contract with City Bridge to expire or to terminate, then New York City then has to pay the leasing fees to these third-party providers at market rate in order to be able to have continuous service. So that is not a good situation for New York City to be in. So for all this free fiber, it's contingent on us maintaining this contract with City Bridge. Otherwise, we have to start footing the bill.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that explanation, because even though I've been to 4 meetings of wired broadband, I could never work out, like, what is the point of all this? So, okay, my final question is, I get up in the morning and there's a tower sprouting in front of my house or the apartment building next door. What do I do?
Well, that'll be too late. You have to do it now. You have to either issue a moratorium now, a disapproval now, um, or be part of the historic preservation review, because if any towers are being proposed right now for historic preservation review and you don't comment on it, which provides you the right to do so under federal law, then you've lost that opportunity. The Public Advocate's Office has been clear in letting us know that the more community boards who are on board opposing the 5G towers, the greater the negotiating power, or whatever leverage we'll have with the mayor will be much greater the more community boards are on board. Because right now there are reports that it's only a few people who are opposing it. It hasn't gone out that 25% of New York City has already opposed this. So if it's sprouting out outside of your window, you certainly can get in touch with your city council person. But from what I see, the city council members have not been interested in this issue. There are a few who are very active on this issue, but many of them are not. And so you have to educate your city council person, your assembly members, and your senators. Senator Rebecca Seawright has already introduced Assembly member Rebecca Seawright has already introduced a bill to study the health effects of 5G, just like the New Hampshire Commission did. Senator Alonce from Staten Island has introduced a bill to have at least a 250-foot setback requirement for these 5G towers. So there is some movement in this area, but not enough. So the problem is that if it's going to be going up at this point, you're probably not going to have very much of a say on it unless you've already issued a moratorium, a disapproval, or have engaged in the Historic Preservation Review and received support from the State Historic Preservation Office to relocate the tower.
Okay. Gotcha. I don't think my sidewalk is big enough to put one on, but we have apartment buildings, dense areas of apartment buildings in the Northeast Bronx where they can ground them in. So
and they have been doing that in New York City, and they try to do that in Greenwich Village, where the streets are very narrow. But from my understanding, I think most, if not all, have now been removed, and the State Historic Preservation Office has disapproved or told them that they have to put them someplace else. So they're not apparently going to be put in the West Village. But those streets are very narrow down there, and they don't care because there's no setback requirement. The city has not put in a setback requirement that it has to be at least 10 feet or 20 feet or 30 feet. There's none. It can be as close as 6 feet to your house. They can put it very close to your house or apartment building.
Well, our sidewalks are not 10 feet wide, especially now that there are more rain gardens being installed, right? One of our big priorities is diverting stormwater. So if there's room on the sidewalk, especially around a tree pit, they're going to put a rain garden or a bioswale, depending on how fancy you want to get. So that doesn't leave much sidewalk left, to put the thing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so everybody else on the call, other questions for our speakers?
No other questions. I mean, this is concerning. I'm definitely one of those that are concerned in terms of the long-term effects and ramifications. So I'm thankful that you shared this information. I think we just need to continue to inform ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And then also the other thing that the city will tell you is that the federal government requires these 5G installations, or these 5G installations, once they're installed, cannot be taken out under federal law. That is incorrect. Under federal case law, the Telecommunications Act has been interpreted by the Second Circuit, which we are governed by, that the carrier must show a gap, in a significant gap, not just a dropped call or two, a significant gap in phone service. That means your landline. And that you're using the least intrusive means possible to fill that gap. The FCC came out with a ruling in 2018, I believe, in which they overruled the Second Circuit test. And by the way, this is the same test that many other circuits around the country have used for the past 20 years. And what has happened is that there was this FCC rule was to take away that requirement by saying that the wireless companies can come in and put in these towers wherever they felt there was a need, a capacity need for future demand. They did not have to show a gap in service, and they didn't have to use the least intrusive means possible. Well, guess what? There was a case that was brought in 2022 by Extenet, who, by the way, is one of the franchisees in New York City, I believe. And they were suing the village of Flower Hill in New York. And they wanted to put in 4G towers. And the village said, well, where's the gap in service? And they couldn't produce it. So they said, no, we're not going to allow you to put these 4G towers in. So Extenet sued the village of Flower Hill, and the judge said, just because the FCC has put together a rule doesn't make it law. It is the FCC's interpretation. And New York is governed by the Second Circuit's interpretation of the Telecommunications Act. And guess what the judge said? That FCC rule does not apply in New York. Therefore, when OTI goes around and says that this is required under federal law, that is wrong, because under federal case law, it has been very clear that they must show a significant gap in phone service, and they're using the least intrusive means possible. When City Bridge came to one of the community boards, and the community board asked, where is the information from these telecom companies to show why you have to put a tower here or a tower there? And you know what the answer was? First of all, they didn't have records of any gaps in service. They said that it's proprietary information and that the telecom companies will not share that information. Well, I'm sorry, but these are our street assets. They must disclose the information. To say that it's proprietary is not appropriate, and the FCC rule allows them to do that. But under this ruling in 2022, it was a senior federal district court judge in the Eastern District of New York, and he said, not so fast. That FCC rule does not apply in New York. And guess what? The contract with City Bridge has not protected the interests of New York residents to say, no, you have to show a gap in service. What they've done is they've basically given a carte blanche with the agreements, not just with City Bridge, with everybody else, and basically not having to show a gap in service. So they can just put them up willy-nilly wherever they want. And that also includes all the rooftop antennas, because the city council is not monitoring that either. So it's really like the Wild West here in New York City. So when they say that this is mandated by federal law and that their hands are tied, that's their common argument. They're not, especially not in New York.
Do you have all this information? Because it is useful information. It's just a lot to absorb and to retain. Can you send us that? Figure out how to send us the PowerPoint that you were going to share. I don't know if all this information is
Yes.
there.
Yes.
So personally, I want to continue to dissect it, but I know I won't retain all of this.
No. I totally understand. It's a lot. It's a lot, and believe me, it took all of us a lot of time to really absorb what was going on, because we went from one community board to the next, to the next, to the next, just to figure out what was going on. Now, I think I figured out what I wasn't doing to share, but first and secondly, I have an entire position paper that documents everything I've said. It documents everything that I said. So I'm going to send you the position paper as well as the PowerPoint that I was going to share with you.
Yes, there are lots of documents attached to all the meeting invites for the 5G meetings. So you might need to edit for us and pick like the top 3, because I don't think I'm going to get people to read like 10.
Right. Well, you can read the summary page.
Okay.
You can read the summary page of my position paper. It's a very long. It's about 60 pages long, but it gives, and also we have copies of a lot of the moratoria and the disapprovals that the community boards have put forth. So and also there's one that's a sample in the position paper from Manhattan Community Board 8.
Okay. So if we want to make sure we don't wait until we see one going up in front of our window, you are saying we need to issue a moratorium of disapproval in advance, because once we see it in front of our window, it's too late.
It's too late.
Okay, so where can I look to just get that language of?
Yes. So it's one of the attachments to the position paper, that it is the actual resolution from the Manhattan Community Board 8. And then I can also send you what other community boards have done as well. So I have a little packet that you can pick and choose from.
Okay, yes, I would love the sample language, just to not reinvent the wheel.
Of course.
Okay, so I'll look for that in my email.
Okay.
Any other closing words you want to share before we go off? And
yes, well, definitely become a consulting party, because there are a number of equity districts, and the equity districts are getting clobbered with the most cell towers. So for instance, in Queens, in Jamaica, they are slated to get 107 towers. And they came out with a huge moratorium. I think it was like a 3-page document.
wow.
They really were very exercised, and they were not happy about being branded as an equity district needing 107 towers. They are very upset about that. So, but it's very important to also become a consulting party, and I can also send you information about how to do that and how to apply. So And I also have, there was also a couple of town halls that we've done in New York City regarding the consulting party status and how to go about that.
Okay, so one question about becoming a consulting party, and I know that's come up in a couple of the meetings I did attend. If we don't have any towers in our community board district yet, do we have standing to become a consulting party?
Oh yeah, it has nothing to do. Yeah, absolutely, because the FCC told the City Bridge that they were not supposed to construct any 5G towers, that they must do a historic preservation review prior to construction, an environmental review prior to construction, and now they're being penalized for the ones that they already were constructed prior to this review. So um, so yeah, it has nothing to do with whether you have towers yet. It's the historic preservation review has to be done prior to construction.
Okay, I'm sure I have that in my email because it was raised
Um,
in several of the meetings I attended that you led. So I guess we need to get on the stick with that before.
Yes,
Before
because because there's a time deadline. Because once City Bridge submits to the State Historic Preservation Office their application for a proposed tower, you have 30 days in which to respond, and that's it. So if you miss out on those 30 days, you've missed the opportunity.
Okay, I see a raised hand from our board member, Miss
Hi,
Judith Benitez. Judy, go ahead.
hi. I just want to make sure, because maybe I missed it. Do we have no scheduling of any towers in our area at all, or are they contemplating this?
Well, they're contemplating it for all of New York City. I
Okay,
haven't I haven't checked for Community Board 12, but I can get back to Carla regarding that.
okay.
I think there are none planned.
Yeah, I didn't see any when I last checked, but I can take a look again.
Yeah,
Thanks. In case I missed something, I'm just learning how to navigate the New York City open data website. So sometimes I miss a trick here or there. So if you
because sometimes they pop up and you don't even know they're coming.
Exactly, and that's what happened in Jamaica, and they're very exercised about that.
yes. Okay. So
Thank you.
yes. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and I'll send you that information.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? I don't see any other raised hands. Nope. Yeah, I don't see any raised hands. So, Odette, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much.
It's a real education and a rare opportunity for us as a community to get out in front of something before it's happened.
Right,
You know,
right, exactly. And also, can I just mention one other thing that's very important? The telecom industry has been very busy on the federal level. And I'm also involved on the federal level as well as on the local level. They have introduced over 90 bills in Congress to take away local control, over 60 of which are of concern to us. And there are about a dozen that are gaining traction right now. And 3557, HR 3557, will take away every single success that New York City and every other community in the United States has had. And it's the industry's Christmas list. And you know what they do? They expressly exclude moratoria, which has been what our success has been here in New York City. And they virtually eliminate environmental and historic preservation reviews for towers. And that has also been what has been successful for us here in New York, as well as other parts of the country. Now, that's just the beginning of how horrible 3557 is. And there are other bills that what they've done is if they can't get the big kahuna, if they can't get their entire Christmas list, what they've done is they've sectioned off little pieces from this big bill, and they've sectioned it off into little bills. And now they're introducing these little bills. They see that they can't get the big kahuna, so they're sectioning off little bills and they're trying to attach it to must-pass bills, like appropriations bills, omnibus bills. And we're involved with trying to get involved, get all of the representatives in New York, activate the New York delegation in order to preserve our local rights. Because let me tell you, any of those bills get passed, it's going to chip away or eliminate all the successes we've had in New York City. They have used surgical precision to take away every single success that we have had in this country to oppose the 5G towers and in order to maintain local rule. So I would also implore you to please get in touch with your U.S. representative. I'm very knowledgeable about the federal bills, and there's also another lobbyist who's very knowledgeable about the federal bills, and he works for another organization. And and we can lead the meetings and stuff, and so we can help you very much, because we're now talking to a lot of representatives right now.
Sorry, who? Chris. Oh, okay, thanks. I see another hand raised. Chris?
Yes. Hi, Odetta. I came in late and I've gone to a lot of meetings on 5G, and I think this is so important. I don't think people really understand the importance of this, and just for our health. And if we look at the geography of Community Law 12, so I think it's so important that we get ahead of it and we make a statement, because as you said, or someone said, they will just come and pop it up, and you will see the implications, the health implications of this, especially in this community. And it reminds me of what has happened in the South Bronx with the asthma. When you get a certain community, they will just do certain things. So I think, again, it's very important that we get ahead of this and make that statement, as the person said before. So,
Yes.
yes, great. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I think we can close out this section of the meeting. Thank you again, Odette and Theodora, for presenting and kind of creating some order for us, so, because we haven't been confronted with it yet. We just didn't know. So thank you, and yes, I will look for another one of those meeting invites for the Wednesday meetings.
Okay, excellent. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So for the rest of our board members, I do have some quick updates on our 7-item list of priorities for the committee for the year. So I'm going to run through those very, very fast. We do have a meeting scheduled jointly with Parks and Recreation on April 10th to discuss supporting greener food options in the Bronx. So, and I'll type this all up and send it out in the meeting minutes, but just, in case it grabs anybody's attention. May 2nd, the Department of Health Rat Remediation and Pest Control team will be presenting on what else we can be doing to support their efforts. And that's it for the moment. Those are my highlights. Any questions from anyone? Nope. Okay, so it is 8:10, and I am going to close the meeting. Thanks everyone for taking the time to participate, and see you all soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
And Alfredo, and everyone that joined. Good evening.
Thanks. So I marked everybody that was on
Great job.
the Zoom. Thanks.